Hello friends, SentinalH here, and welcome to the first video of a sort of tutorial series for Factorio, where we're going to be going over systems and ratios and other things that you might find interesting and helpful when playing Factorio. So this is an awesome game and I really love it, but it can be daunting. Certain aspects of it can be very challenging to wrap your head around, and perhaps no more so than the nuclear reactor recently added in the 0.15 update. It can be a difficult task to try and decipher how this works, as well as the various machine ratios involved, but in this video we're going to go through it, and by the time this is over you'll be able to build yourself a nuclear reactor in such a way that you can later upgrade it, and you'll know how it works so that you can build it to any size and scale that you require. So let's start from the very beginning. The uranium. So in order to use the nuclear reactor, you're going to require uranium. Now, you can start mining this as soon as you gain access to sulfuric acid, because you mine it using the standard electric mining drill. And then it requires you to add sulfuric acid. It has a cool alternate look when placed on uranium. All four sides are capable of, well, three of the four sides are capable of accepting and outputting sulfuric acid, and the one side outputs the uranium. All you have to do is take some pipe and plug it into a sulfuric acid supply. So before you have the nuclear reactor technology actually researched, you can begin to mine uranium and build up a stockpile. It'll require 10 sulfuric acid for every 10 ore mined. Once you've acquired the nuclear reactor research, which isn't easy given how expensive it is, then you'll need to build yourself, if I find it in here, I'm in a creative world by the way, some centrifuges. These are what's going to turn the raw uranium ore that you mine into the refined uranium that you use to create the nuclear fuel cells. Simply click on it and select uranium processing. Now, if we look at this over by products, you'll see two percentages. This process outputs two things. 99% of the time you'll get the depleted uranium, and 0.7% of the time you'll get the enriched uranium. It doesn't seem like a very high percentage, and you're right, it isn't. You're going to need several centrifuges processing uranium constantly, but you will get the enriched uranium and 235, and you will be able to produce uranium fuel cells. Once you've acquired some uranium 235, you'll want to make some uranium fuel cells. All you'll need to do is combine 1 235 with 19 238 and 10 iron plates. This will create 10 uranium fuel cells. So as you can see, 1 235 produces quite a bit of fuel, 10 for every one. It will last a good amount of time. One thing you need to keep in mind about the nuclear reactor is that it will use fuel even if you're not actively draining power from it. So you definitely need to make sure that when you set it up, it's going to be running all the time. This is a sort of system that you can use to completely replace the the current power supply for your base once you have it up and running. Once you have that going, you're going to want to get yourself a couple of things. In order to build a nuclear reactor, you require multiple components that need to be combined together. You'll need at least one of the actual nuclear reactor blocks, which require 500 concrete, 500 steel plates, 500 advanced circuits, which will probably be the most difficult thing to acquire, and 500 copper plates. Once you have at least one of these, you're also going to need 4 heat exchangers. This is because one nuclear reactor can run 4 heat exchangers. These are a lot cheaper, requiring 10 steel plates, 100 copper plates, and 10 pipes each. So for a total, 40 steel plates, 400 copper plates, and 40 pipes. Not bad. You'll also require, most likely, some of these heat pipes. They're not strictly necessary, but if you want to set up your reactor in such a way that it can then be expanded later, you're going to need some. Each one will require 10 steel plates and 20 copper plates. As you can see, these require a decent amount of copper because they're involved in transferring heat. In order to then get power out of the nuclear reactor, you'll require the new steam turbine block. You're going to need, I believe, 5 or 6 of these per. Let's go up. Let me make 100% sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Okay. Let me not give you any wrong information. You're going to want 6 of these steam turbines for every 1 nuclear reactor. So let me just set this down so you can see essentially what we're talking about. 1 nuclear reactor can support 4 heat exchangers, which together output enough steam to run 6 steam turbines. 1, 4, 6. This is a basic ratio. It's not 100% accurate. In fact, the nuclear reactor, you have to build a lot of these in order for this to be an exact amount. However, 6 steam turbines will run continuously off of 1 nuclear reactor and 4 heat exchangers. They will never be any you'll never run out of steam, basically. There'll be a very slight surplus, which you can actually store in liquid tanks if you want. But 6 turbines is a good ratio. If you want to try and get complicated and get every last piece of efficiency, you're going to need to build like 100 of these. So for now, let's just make things simple. So this is the kind of setup that you would, well, not this exact arrangement, but the kind of setup that you would use for running a single nuclear reactor is that you would run water. I can't put it over here, but you would run water into these 4 heat exchangers, and you can use heat pipes to connect them to the reactor. Let me just get a whole ton of these. One side of each heat exchanger will have a little flame icon on it, and if you look at the picture, you'll see the heat pipe coming out of the heat exchanger and going onto the ground. This is where you attach heat pipe, okay? And if I hold a heat pipe in my hand, you'll see that icon appear on both the heat exchangers and the reactor. These points right here, all around the reactor, are where you can attach heat sources, or things to transfer the heat. You can attach heat exchangers directly to these, like that, or you can use heat pipe. Now, it should be noted, there is no heat loss when you use these. It doesn't matter how long your string of heat pipes is and how far away your heat exchangers are from your reactor cores. There is no heat loss. It will take longer for your reactor to heat up based on the number of heat pipes, but that doesn't really matter, because once the reactor is hot, you should try and make sure that it never cools off again. Once your reactor is running, you want it to stay running forever, because it wastes a lot of energy starting up. It takes a long time to heat up, and while it's heating up, it's burning fuel while not producing any energy. In order to get power out of the system, the temperature needs to hit 500 C. That produces the 500 C steam that the steam turbines need in order to actually work. The nuclear reactor will get up to a maximum temperature of 1000 C, and currently there is no overheating and melting down. Once the reactor is heated up to 1000 C, it'll stay there as long as you have 4 heat exchangers attached. If you try and attach a 5th one, it'll slowly cool down. So if you want it to run constantly, then you just use 4. Okay? One side of each heat exchanger, the side opposite the heat pipe connection, is where you get the steam out. The heat exchangers will pass water through their other 2 sides, but steam comes out there. I guess it could be considered the front. Again, it doesn't matter how long your pipes are for steam. The steam does not cool down over distance, and it can be stored in liquid tanks, the types of which you would use to simply store oil or water. the superheated steam will actually stay in there and stay at that temperature, which is completely unrealistic. But if you wanted to, you could place down a lot of storage tanks and slowly build up a surplus of steam, so that in the unlikely but possible event that you allow yourself to run out of nuclear fuel, you can still keep your power running for a while you work to remedy the situation, or if biters get in and destroy your nuclear reactor, which would be devastating. All right. So far, what we can, what you should take away from this is that one nuclear reactor will support 4 heat exchangers, which will support 6 steam turbines continuously. Now, if we look at the nuclear reactor, this is where things start to get complicated. Nuclear reactors have a value called the neighbor bonus. If you look at the bottom of the tooltip on the right side, you'll see the neighbor bonus 0%. What is the neighbor bonus? Well, nuclear reactor cores are scalable with each other. When you place them right next to each other, and they have to be fully lined up, so these 3 connections have to be made with the other reactor. You cannot offset them. If we take the reactor and offset it like this, neither of these will get the neighbor bonus. They need to be completely adjacent to each other. Now, if we look at these, we still have no neighbor bonus. Now, why is that? Well, you only gain the neighbor bonus for cores that are actually running. There has to be fuel in these in order to get the neighbor bonus. So what we're going to do is just throw some fuel in, just so that we can see what this looks like. So I've got a ton of fuel now. We're going to throw the fuel in there. And it doesn't matter that I can't cool these down. Like I said, they don't explode. If we look at this now, we have 100% neighbor bonus on both of these nuclear reactors. What does this mean? Well, essentially, the neighbor bonus is a multiplier for the number of heat exchangers that the nuclear reactor can run. So because this reactor right here now has 100% bonus, it can now support an additional 4 heat exchangers. So our right side nuclear reactor core can now support 8 of these heat exchangers. And likewise, this other reactor core would also be able to support 8 heat exchangers. So we've gone from 1 reactor core being able to support 4 heat exchangers to 2 reactor cores with their neighbor bonuses able to support 16. So 2 reactor cores can produce the same heat output as 4 of them by themselves. So nuclear reactors are far more efficient when utilized in this manner. So what you need to keep in mind with the neighbor bonus is that whatever that number is, 100%, 200%, 300%, that's simply a multiplier on the number of heat exchangers that the thing can run. So because we have 100%, we can run bonus, we can run twice as many. If I go ahead and add some more, boop, boop, and I put fuel in, we'll just take half of that. This fuel core now has a 200% bonus. It can now run even more of them. If we come over here, I've set up a little bit of a counting demonstration. So this is what I would consider the largest segment of nuclear reactors that I would personally want to worry about working with. You can't build these in a 3x3 orientation like this. You might think that this would be great because the center one here would have a neighbor bonus from all 4 of these. And indeed, it actually would. Let me grab some more fuel and see what the maximum theoretical neighbor bonus is. Again, the reactor cores only benefit from the neighbors that are directly adjacent to them. These ones on the corner don't actually benefit the center one. 400% is the highest neighbor bonus you can get. The problem with this is there's no way to give this fuel. The only way to put fuel into this reactor would be for you personally to run over here and fuel it back up. That's because you have to use an inserter in order to put fuel in. Logistics robots won't be able to put the fuel straight in for you. So you have to leave at least a couple of blocks of space near each one of these in order to actually put the fuel in. So you're never going to make a block of reactors that's more than 2 blocks thick like this, because this gives you the maximum usable neighbor bonuses. You can make this row as long as you want, and you can do it vertically as well. the point of this situation right here is that I've set up a number of these fast inserters just to represent the number of sets of heat exchangers that each one of these would be able to run while it's running. So these ones on the corner, I've placed down 3 fast inserters. What this is representing is 3 sets of 4 heat exchangers. So these 12 heat exchangers could be run from this nuclear reactor. Conversely, this nuclear reactor can run 4 sets. Over here, I've got 2 nuclear reactors set up. They've both got their neighbor bonus, and each one is currently running 2 sets of 4 heat exchangers. So this setup right here with 8 nuclear reactors would be able to run 16 and then another 12 for a total of 28 sets of 4 heat exchangers. So we're getting, you know, quite high up in these numbers. So you can see that nuclear reactors scale very quickly, and you want them to scale very quickly because by doing it this way you gain far more power out of the same amount of fuel. If I put 8 of these separate from each other, they'd only each be able to run 4 of these. But by putting them next to each other, we can now run 28 sets of 4 for a lot more power. Just to let you know the kind of power that these nuclear reactors can produce, these 2 nuclear reactors are currently the only source of power on this electric network. They're currently producing 145 megawatts. Imagine how much power we could get out of this. So that's essentially the nuclear reactor. The way that I like to fuel nuclear reactors, we'll leave on this. The way that I like to fuel nuclear reactors is with active requester chests. For each reactor, you'll want to place a requester chest next to it, and then just request uranium fuel cells. You don't need to store 50 uranium fuel cells in each of these chests. Simply requesting 10 of them is more than sufficient. And obviously you'll then need to place an inserter, and it doesn't have to be fast either going into it. So by doing this and using the logistics system, you can build all this around it while still gaining all these neighbor bonuses. The large amount of space that these blocks of turbines and heat exchangers take up can make it quite difficult to build a system at this scale, and you'd need a lot of heat pipe in order to make it work. And this reactor, if I built it out completely, would take up a huge amount of space, and I haven't gotten around to building this just because it kind of boggles my own mind when I try and wrap my head around how to set this up. But I will set this up at some point, just so you can see how large a crazy size nuclear reactor can get in Factorio. But I hope you've taken from what you've taken from this is that you now know how to build, utilize, and maintain a nuclear reactor. It's really not that complicated once you break it down to the ratios between the core components. So to once again reiterate, one nuclear reactor core can support 4 heat exchangers, which can then support 6, not 7, 6 of the steam turbines. Neighbor bonuses. For every 100% neighbor bonus, a nuclear reactor can support another set of 4 heat exchangers for another set of 6 turbines. Now, it is important to note before we close, you're going to have to supply a lot of water to something like this. This one offshore pump is able to supply enough water to run these 2 nuclear reactors at full blast. However, if you start building really large reactors, like if I actually tried to set this behemoth of a reactor up, you would need significantly higher amounts of water. I recommend building something like that right next to a massive body of water like this, or at least somewhere where you can place a lot of offshore pumps. You're going to need many offshore pumps, each supplying dedicated water lines to individual segments of a reactor of that size if you want to be able to run it, actually run it. I've actually got 2 offshore pumps currently running this reactor setup. I'm just using 1 pump per nuclear reactor core at this point. The point is, you need a lot of water. So, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I hope that it's been enlightening. I hope that if you were on the fence about the nuclear reactors, that you now have a clear idea of how to build these. I found all this information on a forum post, but I hope that this has made it more accessible, and I hope that you give the nuclear reactors a try because they really are awesome. So let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Factorio Tutorials. It really helps me out when you like, and it really helps me out when you leave comments. YouTube loves that kind of thing. Join the Discord if you're interested, especially if you like playing Factorio. We have many people on the Discord, several at least, including Waterlubber, who absolutely loves this game. And if you had questions about Factorio, that's the best place to ask. Of course, if you have questions about this video, feel free to ask in the comments. I'm SentinalhMC, and I'm signing out.